Well, hello and welcome to our very first Dying to Talk virtual cafe. I am Michael Bloom, your Caregiving Without Regret expert, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Kim Adams, who is our end-of-life grief coach who has joined us to co-facilitate this session. We are using Blab together for the very first time, and we are used to, both of us in our own worlds, to do ongoing interview sessions, training webinars, informative discussions using Hangouts on Air. But we decided that we wanted to bring ourselves to the world at Blab because it could make for a more engaging experience. And we know that more and more people will be using Blab over time. We thought about really, initially waiting until next year, but Kim every year typically does a webinar around how to manage grief during the holidays, because we know the holidays are a really difficult time for people. For those of us that have been in the caregiving role, if you're getting to know me for the very first time, I am a caregiver coach, but I provided direct full-time live-in care for both of my elder parents during their final years. Unfortunately, sadly, both have passed, but I know how tough the holiday season can be when you're in the caregiving role, and quite honestly, even beyond the caregiving role. The season brings a whole host of challenges mixed in with a feeling of bittersweetness and joy. So I think we're going to explore some of these topics a bit tonight. And Kim, I'm happy to turn things over to you just to introduce yourself a bit, and then maybe we can just blab about how people can cope with this stress and really kind of move through the holidays with a bit more energy to care of themselves along the way.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. What a super introduction. And it's so great to be co-hosting this Blab with you. As myself being new to Twitter, this, I think, as you say, is another option, another platform. So happy to be doing this. And as you mentioned, I have done an audio series every year around handling the holidays your way. So when you and I were talking, I thought, wow, we both agreed that let's just get on camera and really be able to kind of share this with individuals. And as you mentioned, people can even join us on this Blab tonight. So hopefully we'll have some folks that will be able to do that. So as you said, I'm an end-of-life coach and worked in the grief and loss field for about the last 6 years. And really one of my passions is to help people around advanced care planning and preparing for the end, whenever that time is, regardless of a medical crisis or a health status. And also throughout that whole process and the journey, there is grief. You and I have done some webinars together around grief along the caregiver journey and beyond. So I think that this will be really informative tonight for us to kind of just blab together and give practical tips and strategies to people to really, as you said, to recharge their own energy, to get through whether they are a caregiver, whether they've recently had someone pass in their life, whether maybe they're caring for someone or there's someone in their life that maybe this is their last holiday, just given their health status. So just ways and strategies and tips to really help people to just do more than survive, but actually thrive this holiday season.
That's a really great point.
Yeah.
And I've noticed a number of people have that I'm connected with. You and I both have connections on Facebook, and I actually have a connection who's in the process of doing some care with her elder parents, but they're in separate households right now still. But this person actually posted an image this morning. She just got her Christmas tree and just put it up, but she feels behind. She's weeks behind. So the tree was gotten last night, and her statement was, "I wish it could decorate itself." And so she wasn't, she felt, sort of behind with this. And I kind of responded in a message being supportive that, it's understandable to kind of feel that way. You've got a lot on your plate and to deal with this. And really, it's your tree. Do it at your pace, and recognize. So if it's going to happen when you feel inspired to make it happen. So we feel a need to force ourselves sometimes to do things because it's expected of us.
Expectations, yes.
Or even it's expected of ourselves. And I think one of the key things during this period, if you're experiencing grief, and grief, believe me, does not just have to happen when a loved one passes. It could be in the midst of care, because the way the holidays are this year in 2015 may not be the way the holidays were in, I mean, they're definitely not the way holidays were in prior years, or you think back when maybe, oh, I was in such better spirits and could do this, and now I'm not. So it's the expectations that we place on ourselves that can, sort of overwhelm our, those emotions and leave us feeling guilty. And I was wondering what you think about managing expectations during this period, Kim.
Yeah, that's a huge one that, I shared a lot with people. And it's really about, I mean, the title of the audio series I used to do about handling the holidays your way speaks directly to expectations, and really to be gentle with ourselves, that people are in different stages themselves with grief and loss, regardless of, of where, well, I should say not regardless, but may not be in the same space we are. So they're either wanting to move us forward, or they're wanting to have things be the way they used to be. And so other people can really begin to put on us like the shoulds and the here's how it needs to happen. And really the bottom line is that we need to focus inward and be gentle with our own self and managing our own expectations. And that may mean changing up the way things were. That may mean less of, whatever the big traditions were. So being able to really just, number one, I say, be gentle with ourselves and realize that it's different. So expectations are different, and we get to choose. We have the power to say, no, not this year. Doesn't mean it won't be back to or change up to something else in future years. But right now, this is not going to work for me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, being gentle, I think, is huge around expectations.
It's a really good point, and it's totally to be gentle. And then the other area that I think is a big one, and is folks, we tend to feel a sense of heaviness at this time of year. I was actually thinking about writing a post about this, because I'm not sure if you noticed, Kim, but I had an article that was on familyaffairs.com this month about embrace the maybe during these holidays. Go with the flow and embrace the maybe. I actually, in this particular article that I wrote before, but I'm thinking about doing another part to it, was talking about 6 years ago in 2009, I was in the midst of caring for my father. Both of my parents at that time, but my dad had vascular dementia. And we would typically go to a cousin's house for Thanksgiving, another cousin's house for Hanukkah. Actually, at one time I was hosting Hanukkah, but that stopped when I was in this whole caregiving phase. And there were other holiday commitments that I sometimes, was doing on my own. And with my dad's state of health and my direct need for care, I didn't feel I could commit to things. So one of the things I actually did that particular season when people asked if I would do something is I would ask them permission if I could say maybe. Which, and in a few cases, I actually said no, which was a big thing for me, because I realized it was beyond what I felt I could do, which was a very healthy thing to do. But in other situations, like Thanksgiving, I actually got a whole prepared dinner to have Thanksgiving Day in case we couldn't get out of the house, because my dad's behavior was so unpredictable. I didn't know if he would agree to get in the car to drive over to the family member's house. So I was prepared. My cousin said, of course. I mean, when I explained the situation, because it was just, it was unpredictable. We did get to go. We had a really good time. We ended up leaving early on the other end because he got impatient and wanted to leave, and it was just easier to go, but we went. But the moral of the story was I started using the word maybe and used it other times, and just to give permission, because I mean, I realize it maybe wouldn't be as effective if it's about you have to travel on a plane somewhere. You can't necessarily be.
Sure, right.
But if it's happening in your local area, and many of us have local commitments, whether they be work parties or friend parties and all of that stuff, if you're unsure of how you're going to feel, or even unsure of how you're going to feel emotionally, if they're your friend, I think folks would be best to feel comfortable saying the truth.
Yep.
Um, a lot of us hide the truth because if we feel it's not a sign of strength. But I
Mm,
think it's really you're showing true strength and respect for your friend or your family member if you let them know exactly what you're thinking and why you don't feel comfortable committing, but you want to
hmm.
keep the possibility open.
Yes. I love that, Michael, the maybe, because you're right. It does allow to take the stress off yourself because you know that there is that out to be able to say if things aren't going the way, the day of or whenever the event's happening, to be able to say, yeah, it's just not going to work without the feeling of guilt because you've said maybe. So I love that option. Yeah. Yeah. Strengthening that no muscle is really, it's difficult for some of us, and especially if you're in the midst of you're not wanting to let other people down. Um, so again, I liken it to, it's a muscle and being able to say that. But if we can start maybe with maybe and then move ultimately into being able to feel more comfortable saying, no, this isn't going to work for me this year. Because also you're also leaving the door open, as I said earlier, that it's no this time, but it's not a no forever. It's
Mm.
not a no, we're never having a Christmas tree, or we're never going, to our favorite restaurant for, Hanukkah or any of the other traditions, but it's no right now. So I love the option of maybe. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, so you're leaving yourself open to possibility
Yeah.
and being able, to go with the flow.
Yeah.
The other thing too, I was wondering if you had any thoughts of ways that someone might think about, exploring an activity that could restore their energy at this time. I know some of the big things is feeling low energy because you've lost some traditions that
Yes.
maybe you've had in the past with certain people, and
Right.
they're not there. And I was wondering, Kim, and may even benefit me too, tomorrow is my aunt's 94th birthday. She still
Yes.
blesses with us, and I just came from having
At
dinner with
dinner.
her,
Uh-huh.
which is really wonderful. My aunt's birthday is the same day as my parents' wedding anniversary, so
Mm.
they tomorrow would have been their 49th. Well, it still is their 49th wedding anniversary.
Sure,
So,
sure.
so and a lot of times in the past we used to do things in conjunction with both, and it happened, around the holidays. So
Mm.
things have changed. I did have dinner with her tonight. We had a really lovely time, where she lives, but there's a missing of those traditions,
Sure,
and I
sure.
still feel somewhat down. And I guess, are there ways? I think about your emotional first aid kit and things like that. Are there ways that we can kind of, look for developing these new traditions, or how do we reflect on the old things that happen, and honor our feelings?
Sure, sure. And what you just said, the last piece is huge about honoring the space that you're in. What a bittersweet moment it may be tomorrow with, your aunt's birthday and yet your parents', wedding anniversary, and they're not here in the physical form for you to be able to celebrate with them. So, yeah, one of the pieces is again about creating new traditions. As much as we want and long for what we had, we're not able to go back, whether that's someone that's actually died or whether that's, if you're a caregiver for someone that's kind of declining or whatever, there's not an ability to go back, but there's the ability to move forward in creating new. And we get to decide what that is. So whether that's, having a holiday meal at someone else's house and you not preparing it this year, or whether that's deciding to set a place at the table for the loved one that can't be there, either because they're, physically not here or because maybe they're in bed or in a hospital or in assisted living. But setting a space so that there is the remembrance, so that you're feeling that they're a part of. Lighting candle. I know a lot of times people will do that in terms of being able to just have that memory of lighting a candle, doing an activity together, either with others that are around or with friends that that your loved one would enjoy. Something, again, as you said, because it's going to recharge you. Um, so those are just a couple things that come to the top of my mind, but I think it's important to find new ways that are not going to what's the word, that are not going to drain you, but in some ways they're going to fill you up. And that may even be, as I'm speaking about this now, something as simple as, you know, going out into nature, just
Mhm.
taking some time to go out into nature. You know, if you enjoy a walk in the woods or if you enjoy the water, just being able to get out there and just filling yourself up with, doesn't have to be material things, but just what it is that you enjoy doing. I know a lot of times people also will write letters. You know, they'll literally write a letter to their loved one. Um, you know, so there's many ways to be creative, and I think it's just a matter of just being able to just say, number one, let's just breathe,
Mhm.
get centered and grounded, and then be able to see what it is that brings you joy and how does that fit in. Is it a new tradition? Is it something that you're going to go out and, you know, fill up your own self with nature or the water or whatever it might be? So
Mhm.
yeah.
And I think those are great examples of possibilities for someone to do. The
Mm,
other thing I want to say, we talk a lot about joy, and this is kind of the season of joy.
mm,
Joy it can look very different to people, and even look very
yes.
different at different times to ourselves.
Right.
So, joy for someone who's extremely busy, like a caregiver, could be getting some solid sleep,
Yes.
and rest. And as you have other family members that may be gathering, I think it's okay to
Yeah.
share that you would like to get a little bit of rest. And if you
Mm,
need that, even finding a time to take a nap can be
right.
restorative. For me, something I probably haven't shared with you before, Kim, I do not like winter solstice because it's the shortest daylight day of the year.
Uh-huh.
I've known even before I got into caregiving that the shorter daylight times of the year brings me down naturally.
Mm,
Okay.
mm.
I don't think I'm as light sensitive but there's maybe a touch of sad in me, the seasonal affective disorder, perhaps.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I do have artificial lights I've used in the winter sometimes, but it's still, I get lower. Couple that with the fact that I've had loss at this time of the year. My dad ended up passing on December 21st years
Right.
ago, my parents' anniversary. There's a whole lot of things happening in this period of time where I'm at my lowest energy period anyway,
Mm, mm.
that can make me feel a little drained. Well, I'll tell you what I did this year, and I am still feeling tired. But on Sunday, I had no commitments this past Sunday, and I put myself into a football coma, meaning
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
rested, watched football, which I love
Yep.
football, and I did some work Saturday, but Sunday I made a me day, and I said it, and I took the our football team, the New England Patriots, wasn't playing until the nighttime. I took a nap during the day. I really
Mm.
just did not put any expectations on myself except the desire for rest. And I joked that it was my football coma day, but
Uh-huh.
that was my way of restoring myself. Fortunately, it was
Great.
a really good football day for us. But but
Right.
uh, but again, I got some joy. But that helped me approach the week with a
Yes.
lot more energy,
Yes.
even though I'm very deeply missing my parents. And it helped me approach my clients in a very restorative way because I
Mm.
know that many of them are struggling at this time. And I think what helps us get real is that we all have something that perhaps we're dealing with during the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you haven't lost a direct family member or friend or not caring, the holidays always bring some level of stress and busyness, extra busyness, although it's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful too. So acknowledge your need for rest and take advantage of it when you can, and even ask for support around that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's huge. And that leads me also to, as you said, you know, took time for you to recharge. Excuse me. Recharging looks very different. You know, some people, like I'm very similar to you, to be able to recharge and just, you know, have a day of nothing, of just myself, really recharges me. Now, for someone else, that may be being out in a group, you know,
Mhm.
and so really again knowing what it is that fills you up, knowing what it, you know, what recharges you, because it does look very different, and not allowing someone else to impose that, you know, come on out to the party and let's all, you know, hang out together. Well, if that tends to drain you, there's an opportunity to say, you know what, maybe, or no, I'm not really interested. So being able to know what it is that fills you up, in addition, of course, rest, eating well, exercise, sleep, being able to kind of nurture our physical needs, absolutely. And beyond that, knowing what it is that really does fill you up. Because the last thing we want at this holiday is to engage in activities that are going to drain us even more than we already are. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very, very, very important. So, the other thing too, if people are here in a few minutes, I will open up for the possibility for someone to jump on camera. If you have questions, please type them in the chat, or if there's a specific scenario or situation that you're dealing with during the holidays, we really want to help you. Feel like you have a safe space to share whatever you're dealing with that could be causing you some stress during this holiday period. And then maybe you have the opportunity to talk about some practical solutions for yourself to help you do what you need to take care of you. Because if you are taking care of a loved one, the best thing that you can do is to take care of yourself first. I use this metaphor all the time. If you're starting to feel like, you're losing oxygen, you're, struggling for air. If you were in an airplane, they'd say, put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on another. It's the same thing with things that we need to take care of ourselves. And granted, when you're taking care of people that are vulnerable, they do have needs that really come front and center, but it's still really important along the way to do what you can to care for yourself. So again, if there's something you want to talk about, just please type it into the chat, and then we could look into the possibility of having you join us in a few moments. And if you have any questions, I will open up at the other camera options. We do have a few people here with us, and I believe Cynthia is still here with us as well. Who's got her first time on Blab, so that would be cool if she could join us.
Yeah, we'd love it, Cynthia, if you would join us. That would be super. Yes.
Excellent.
And then it looks like Shivram
J85
has joined. Great.
So great. Super. Feel free to introduce your name or let us know your name in the chat. We're happy to have you here. And so other thoughts around, the holidays. So we've talked about, recognize your own needs, be comfortable with sharing them. There is no right order to do things. If you haven't accomplished something yet that you were hoping to achieve by this time, hitting yourself over the head with guilt and regret is not going to help the situation.
No.
Okay? Because we can't get yesterday back.
That's right.
Or the day before. So to the friend who got the Christmas tree, who by this point would normally have it well decorated and lit up, well, you got your tree.
You got the tree. That's right.
All right. It's planted. It's standing where you want it to stand. You decorate when you want. I mean,
absolutely.
Even if it's Christmas Eve and you're decorating with friends and family, do it then. I mean, if that's what moves you, don't force. I mean, if you're going to if decorating a tree makes you feel blah, would you do it, Kim? I mean,
absolutely not. No, if the tree's there, just let it be. If it's you're right, if it's exerting more energy and draining you to be able to have to decorate it, probably because there's some expectation from someone else that the tree is decorated, or maybe it's imposed on yourself. Yeah, absolutely not. Just leave it there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just leave it there.
Which is great. So the other part of this Dying to Talk Cafe is that I want to switch gears a little bit, which is going to be more into your realm of expertise, Kim, which is those that I was caring for my dad in hospice support right in this period. In fact, as in these days, 6 years ago, my dad passed on December 21st. So these final days were very tough for me. In fact, from this point to the 21st, 6 years ago, were probably the toughest week of my life, I would say, in terms of, because I was caring for him at home with hospice support. We had a big snowstorm. Hospice couldn't get out with people to help me at time. In some of the sort of toughest situations, I was dealing with phone support and trying to do interventions that were really tough. so I have a lot of reflection on some of those things, but I know a lot of people are in the midst of care and people will pass during this period. I was just wondering if maybe you could talk about what people could do, if, unfortunately, death and dying doesn't happen at times convenient for us. We can't say
Right.
that these days are off limits, deaths. In fact, last weekend, I have a neighbor who's a really good friend. We had dinner last week. Her husband passed on Thanksgiving Day a year ago. So who was in
Mm.
hospice. So who had cancer. So again, people pass on holidays or near holidays and special days. And I was just wondering what some of your thoughts are about how people can kind of, cope, get their needs met during that time, because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
really tough.
It's really rough. As you're describing that, I'm thinking of a good friend of mine whose 30-year-old daughter just died very suddenly a month ago, and her birthday is actually Christmas Day, the daughter that died. So the mom is not only dealing with the sudden death of her, relatively young daughter, but now Christmas is going to be doubly hard because it was her daughter's birthday. So, it speaks to just the allowing yourself to just be. Grief is it's an internal process. And as you said, death and dying doesn't take holidays off. And so as we're experiencing and moving through these difficult times, I think even more so, it's about just really paying attention and what's the word I want to say? Because all I keep coming back to is the heart. It's just really leading from your heart, allowing our heart to be broken if that's what needs to happen, not trying to put on a front, as you said earlier, just being honest, finding those people that can really support you, that just are with you. They don't need to do anything, but just be with you to allow you to be, I think is such a huge piece of having those, whether it's family members or friends or spiritual, a minister or rabbi or someone that you feel comfortable from a spiritual, religious perspective. Just being able to have someone be there to allow you the space to just be, because grief and loss and death and dying, it's matters of the heart. So we can't intellectualize it. We can't rationalize it. We can't do any of those things with our brain. We need to really just be gentle with ourselves. And number one, it starts with just acknowledging this is a really hard time. I'm sad, or I'm mad that, so and so's not here. Again, if we can just acknowledge that, we can then be able to move through those. It's when we get parked there and we get stuck, that's when we tend to either spin our wheels, our energy just gets drained. So I think the biggest piece is that I suggest to people is just honor where you are in the process. Just really honor, be gentle, make sure your physical needs obviously are taken care of as well, but really just acknowledge the reality of this and that it's hard, and that it who knows what next year will be, but right now, right here in this moment, this is where you are. And get support around that, whether it's as I said, someone from the family members. And I want to just speak for a moment about family. Sometimes we really think that we really hope that our family members will be the ones that can be there and support us, when in fact we need to remember that they're going through grief as well, whether it's someone that's actually actively dying or someone that has died. They're going through their own process, and they may not be the person that can be there for us. And so being able to just recognize that everyone has their own process. um, it's not a logical linear path around death and dying and grief and loss. And so people experience their own process, and we need to just honor them, and we need to honor ourselves. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
there was so much great stuff that you shared there, and to recognize. I think sometimes even those we meet, if a fellow loved a family member has also experienced loss,
Mm,
um, you can experience grief together, but you're all both going through grief in your own way, so that you may need to seek another trusted
Yes.
champion. I like to call them
Yes.
champions
I
now.
love
Get a
that word.
champion in your
Yep.
corner,
Great.
that could help you and just listen, just be there to
Yeah.
listen and to
Yeah.
give you that safe space. Because the other thing that happens with multiple caregivers in
Mm,
a family, siblings, especially when it comes to elder parents or others, and those that have lost, we put expectations on ourselves and others of how they should act during this time,
right.
or the amount of
Right.
time that we should be grieving.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there are no shoulds. When we use those should statements, that's really it's using judgment, and it really
Right.
pulls the energy down. And if you're shoulding others or being should
Right.
yourself, seek somebody else to talk to,
Yeah.
because that's not going to be uh, good enough to help you through, because you don't want to feel worse
That's
from
right.
the
That's
situation.
right.
And don't be disappointed when others, it's hard, it's easier
Mm-hmm.
said than
Mm-hmm.
done,
Right.
when
Right.
people don't necessarily express the same level of sadness, or maybe not so sad anymore, getting, you feel like you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing, wow, they're moving forward their life and I'm still like in this place. Well, we're all on our own path,
On our own path. That's
right?
right. That's right. Emotions can be very raw for someone, especially if it's new in terms of a death or an impending death. Um, and so again, it's just acknowledging that this is the space that I'm in, and that it's okay that you're in the space that you're in, because you're
Mhm.
right. It's our own journey, and yet we can support and receive support from one another. And I think a lot of times, and this may be for those that were looking to support us in terms of a safe space. And that's why I love kind of what we're doing here tonight, Michael, is that, this is an opportunity for someone to just be able to come on camera and be able to share too, because it's not about fixing anything. We're not broken. Our heart is broken, but we're not broken. So it's not like we need to do anything to fix anything. We just need to be present and just allow the other party, the other individual, to just express whatever it is that they need to express. So if we're kind of on that other end of that role of supporting a caregiver or supporting someone that has, a loved one has died, we don't necessarily need to, because a lot of times we think, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do for them. And I'm here to invite us to say, we don't need to do anything, but just have an open space, just create an opportunity for them to just do what it is that they need to do. And we don't need to do anything, but just hold that space for them. So just wanted to bring that important piece in, because a lot of times we say, well, I need to do something. I need to do something. And the reality is we don't. We just need to hold space.
That's a really great point. I mean, that's
Mm.
really, and a lot of times that's what people want, is just to have the health space, is just somebody
Yeah.
else to just listen, to be
Yeah.
there in that safe, comfortable space to be able to share. I mean, because as people will say, sometimes there are no words.
Right.
There really are no words, but a lot can be communicated without words.
Absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
being there to listen, to offer a hug, to offer that support,
Right.
and understanding. And then the other thing too, the person you mentioned, very sadly just lost her daughter. So Christmas is her birthday, and
Right.
this will be the very first one. People
Yes.
understand when you're achieving these firsts, that they're
Yes.
extremely painful.
Right.
When we're experiencing the other ones going forward, we often don't have that same level of understanding, that
Mm-hmm.
we think, oh, I've been doing good. Well, maybe I'm in year 7 and I feel as crappy as I did in year 1 when this just happened. Why is that happening now? I mean, I've heard that before,
Yes.
from some people. I thought I was doing so well. Well,
Mm-hmm.
just because you're feeling grief stricken a number of years later, and I'll let you talk to this in a moment, Kim, doesn't mean that you're any less capable or less of a being. It just is, again, I think, showing you how meaningful that person was in your
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
and how much you still hold on to them. I mean, I've talked to people whose in their 80s and 90s, and their parents have, or other, or spouses have been, gone 20 years or more, and they still feel that pain of the loss even
Sure,
after all of
sure.
those years. So as you said, it's not a linear or logical path. I mean,
Right.
so, and I'm not sure any two holiday seasons will feel the same.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent point, Michael, because you're right. Sometimes we think, oh, it's year 5 or year 6, or, I'm over it, I'm moved on. And, ooh, a wave of grief hits us. Absolutely. I mean, I had that experience. My grandmother died 20 years ago now, and for a couple of years ago, all of a sudden at the holidays, I was like, I was really missing her. And I thought, wow. Immediately I said, okay, no judgment about this because of the time that had passed. This is the space that I was in for whatever reason that was kicked up. Which also, that brings to mind for me that there is that piece that comes from other people too. Well, it's been 10 years, why are you feeling so sad, or, what's going on? So we never know what it is that's going to kind of stir that up for us, and for us also to just acknowledge that emotion. Because if we try and stuff it or suppress it or deny it or run away from it, it's going to come up some other way, and it may emerge in a setting that, if we had kind of looked at it or felt it or dealt with it when it first, was a little bit smaller, and now maybe a big group and somebody says something and boom, all of a sudden, there's an explosion, because, it's energy, and energy's in motion, and, you can't really contain it for too long before it's almost like a boiling pot. So I like to say, it's like the valve on a steam valve. As the waves of emotion come in, it's about acknowledging that. It's about letting them wash over us. Again, not being drowned by them, but allowing them to wash over us and to just be gentle again. No judgment that, the time has passed. Comes with, again, we can't rationalize it with our brain, you know? So yeah,
Yeah, there is no rationalization, but I hear
yeah,
this, I hear this a lot. I should, again, the should
yes,
statement
the
comes up,
shoulds.
the shoulds. I should be doing better this year,
Right.
you know, um, and it's natural to kind of even think that way sometimes, because
Sure,
we
sure.
hear these saying, time heals all wounds, and
Yeah.
um, you know, I don't know. Sometimes I think those wounds can flare up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Grief is an emotional wound to our heart. And so, again, I say that a lot of times grief is in direct proportion. Our feelings of grief are in direct proportion to how we loved. So, certainly not to say, well, if this family member isn't feeling as much grief as I am about our grandmother, then maybe I loved her more and they loved them less. No, that's not what I'm saying. It's more of just our own personal, you know, there's so it makes sense that years later, as you're speaking of, clients in their 70s, 80s, remembering their parent or remembering a spouse, that's a deep love connection there, which
Absolutely.
is very different than, if we're mourning the death of, a favorite TV star. Well, we have a very different relationship. So, I say it's in direct correlation to the amount of love that we had for that individual. So, yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So in the sort of this other segment I was thinking about covering is thinking about the other big thing that happens in the holiday season is shopping and gift giving.
yes,
And
yes.
caregivers can often feel a lot of stress around that, especially many times if they're caring for a loved one and they're taking on. I've actually had a situation where I was talking to somebody because her husband was kind of an odd situation, but we in stereotypes we usually think of the wife as being the one that likes to shop. If we're
Uh-huh,
thinking about the
uh-huh.
stereotype in this relationship, the husband loved
Ah,
Christmas,
yep.
did all the shopping. She hated, my client hated going into a store or a mall if she didn't have to, and her husband would go do the Black Friday shopping and stuff like
Wow.
that. So I used to like Black Friday shopping too one time. But anyway, he was very ill, couldn't do the shopping.
Mm,
She's feeling the pressure
uh-huh.
to now pick up where he can't do it.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So this extra stuff. So kind of process through a bit. What else could you do for gifts that doesn't
Mm,
involve shopping? Okay,
great.
can we think about gifts differently? In your situation, you're caring for your husband who has a brain tumor, who
Mm,
may not make it beyond another holiday season.
right.
Would friends and family members understand, if you really talk this out, that they're not going to get the typical gifts that your husband shops for because he's not available to shop.
Right.
So what can
Right.
you do that's differently? And in fact, could you process even doing gift giving in a way that will bring more support to you and your husband? Because all
Mm,
these people that
mm,
he's bought for, maybe you could do some other sort of celebration in your house, do some home improvement. I mean, we just process different things that could be
great.
possibilities that are different than the going out and shopping for things.
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah.
many things that people will love and treasure, especially if you're caring for a loved one who's ill, that does not have to involve that material gift. And
That's
don't,
right.
but again, it was understandable because she was caring for her husband, but then felt the need to fill the void
Sure.
that
Sure.
would not happen and
Yeah.
wanted to sort of carry on the way it was. So
Carried on.
I
Yeah.
just what you thought. Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. Yeah. And again, trying to just kind of keep things the way that they always had been, when in fact, the situation is quite different now. He's
Mm-hmm.
unable to. So I love that, you're able to brainstorm what are different ways, and certainly I would imagine, I would hope that family and friends would understand as well. But yeah, if she wanted to do something, what are different ways that would both, as you said, fill her up? Because if shopping would drain her, then that's not an activity that probably would have been most appropriate for her. But are
Mm-hmm.
there other ways? Maybe there were some, yeah, handmade things or some other things that, I mean, creativity is, it's endless, right? I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
automatically think of going to the store and buying something, but it doesn't have to be that way. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
and if you knew, and if you're looking to get a gift for the caregiver in your life,
Ah,
one of the best gifts that you could give is your time
there you go.
and
There
your
you go,
presence.
Michael. There you go.
Okay,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be a material thing, and your presence is just time. It's
that's right.
not,
That's right.
and it could be much more meaningful. So,
Mm,
and you can do a lot for a caregiver just to go and spend some quality time with the loved one receiving care, give the caregiver a bit of a break. If you
mm-hmm.
do have resources, perhaps you can pull them together to
Sure.
give someone a gift to have some hours from a local home health agency,
That's
a really nice
fantastic.
gift as well,
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
get some respite care.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
or other or meals for the house, or I mean, there are many things that
Anyways,
one could do, but most caregivers and loved ones will appreciate the presence of
yes,
a person that comes to spend time with them and just want to be with them, and that is priceless.
absolutely. And I love it. Your presence is the present.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it,
You're
it,
right.
it it really is,
Yeah.
and for especially for the grandchildren that may be out there and
Mm-hmm.
others.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just came from
Yeah. I
a
was thinking of
holiday
that.
party at an
Yeah.
assisted living facility where
Yes.
my aunt is, and it was open, and there were so many families there of both, in some cases, four generations of families,
Wow.
spending time together. But the idea is the presence could be the present,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that is really what it's all about, is sharing that time
For sharing.
together, and
Yeah.
that um doesn't involve going to a store.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
so
Right.
in doing that, we are
Mm.
approaching the top of the hour. I believe
That
it or
was
not, when
quick.
you blab, it goes by quick, and
It
we've been
sure
blabbing.
does.
So
We've been blabbing. This is great.
our plan is to come back in 2016 with some other sessions. Maybe when we're beyond the holiday season, we'll have
Great.
others that will come and join us and be willing to share. The idea behind the Dying to Talk Cafe that Kim and I have been thinking about is it's kind of modeled after death cafes a little bit that happen in person, really popular in Europe, that people would feel have a safe space to talk about issues of death and dying, and we wanted to create a dying to talk cafe that would allow people to have, again, this safe space without necessarily thinking of the stigma of death in and of itself, and be an open dialogue, just to talk about any issues of concern that would help them, cope with the challenges in their lives, and then and the understandable downs that take place in life, to help restore and boost the energy so that you keep moving forward. Because the idea is we all must keep moving forward. We're either growing or we're not here.
We're not here. So, that's right. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
So we want to have the space that people would feel comfortable to come and share. And we do have a few minutes left. And thank you. I think somebody else joined. Carlton joined the room. So thank you. Kim, do you want to share a little bit about how folks can find you outside of Blab? And then
outside of Blab, yes. Well, this has just been phenomenal here with Blab tonight. Certainly, people can find me. I'm on my website is www.yourgriefandlosscoach.com. I'm also on Facebook. My business name is Powerful You, so you can find me on Facebook as well, and obviously my personal account, Kim Adams, on Facebook. And here I'm on Twitter at EOL Coach Kim, which is End of Life Coach Kim. So yeah, definitely stay in touch. Twitter, Facebook. My email is kim@yourgriefandlosscoach.com. Certainly, check things out, and here to support people on the journey. So happy to take questions, comments, and just whatever people might need.
Wonderful. And I'm so glad, Kim, that you were able to join me this evening to do this, our first Blab together.
Yes.
So, and we'll look forward to doing more. If you want to stay in contact with me, if you are a caregiver or know of a caregiver who could benefit from some practical strategies to take care of themselves along the way while they're providing care, so they can provide high quality, sustainable support to their loved one, feel free to come and visit me at caregivingwithoutregret.com. And Kim, just to let you know about Kim as well, she does host on Hangouts on the Air monthly dialogues.
Thank you, Michael.
So your monthly dialogues on the topics of living and dying well.
Correct. Yes.
And really, really great forum. She's had some great speakers that have come on. And I also have caregiving power hours that I do through Hangouts on the Air. In fact, I'm somewhat known as the Hangout expert, usually hosting or co-hosting lots of Hangouts on Air. But we wanted to come and try Blab, since a lot of people seem to be enjoying it. And I like the dynamic part of the platform, and look forward to many more. So thank you to those who came and joined us tonight. And do you have anything else to say as we get ready to part shortly?
Just thank you. And thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. And, again, just take gentle care of yourself during the holiday, whether you're a caregiver, whether you've cared for someone, someone has passed and you're in the grief process right now. And again, there's no time frame. So just be gentle with yourself, and wishing everyone a very happy and peaceful holiday season.
That's wonderful. And I'll close by saying kind of what I talked about at the beginning of the hour. Be good to yourself during these holidays. Embrace the word maybe. Embrace the maybe, which is, if you're uncertain at times that you can commit to doing certain things, ask the host if it's okay if you just say maybe, because you'll know in the moment or the day of, you'll have a better idea, because you can't really decide right now. That will take the pressure off of you. and help through this situation. It really made a world of difference in my life a few years back while I was caregiving, when I shared openly why I was saying maybe rather than a definite yes or no. And no one turned me down when I said maybe. They understood. And it can make a world of difference. And no matter where you are, what you're doing, find ways to enjoy this holiday season. I know it could be challenging if you are caring for a loved one who's very ill, if you're missing someone who's very dear to you, that's not here. Kim and I are both there with you.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us, we don't, all of us that are out there, we don't generally feel comfortable talking about these things, but many people have experienced them and certainly understand. So during these holidays, and especially as the new year comes, find your champion. Find your champion to talk to. We will look forward to seeing you in future sessions. Connect with Kim and I at any time. It would be our pleasure to chat with you and provide support. And I hope that you go forward and enjoy a really nice rest of the holiday season and the most prosperous of New Year's. So thank you for joining us for this session of the Dying to Talk Cafe.